was really astounding. So I think it was learning how to multitask, balancing many tasks at once, also really not being precious about your title and what you had to do, because if you're one of 3 or 4 people, you're going to be doing some producer tasks, you're going to be doing some PA tasks.
Yeah.
And so that's something that I think I've taken along as to this day. I try to be a team player and not super precious about my day-to-day tasks.
Well, Seldy Gray, thanks for coming on the podcast today. I know it's a Saturday morning. It's supposed to be off hours for most people, but are you working today?
No, thanks for having me. I am not planning to work today, but who's to say what could come to pass? There's
Who's
always
to say?
opportunities too.
For everyone listening, can you say what your job title is and what that kind of means?
Yes, I'm a development executive at Roth Kirschenbaum Films, or RK Films, as we're formerly known. And what that entails is kind of being on the forefront of reading a lot of the submissions we have coming in terms of scripts, books that are coming in, to assess whether or not we are the correct partners to see through the vision of those to bring them to screen. Usually for this, that means a feature. But really just being kind of the starting point for a lot of the projects. So I'm reading books, I'm reading articles, I'm hearing pitches from writers, and really trying to generate a lot of the initial material for projects, whether that be pitches or additional scripts. So I'm really just kind of a story hound, I would say.
That's a pretty good title, Story Hound Seldy Gray. There we go.
I like the sound of that.
Well, I know I had looked a little bit at your LinkedIn before and IMDb and a couple of the things. I want to go back and talk about your experience and how you got to where you are. But I guess before all of that, did you always love movies and TV? Is this something you grew into later?
Yeah, complete consumer of TV and films growing up, probably even more so on the television side, which is ironic because I do work primarily in features now.
Yeah.
But I joke that my parents used to call the television the idiot box. And I think that was just an invitation for me to like rebel in that one specific area. I was kind of famous for assuming the position, which was just lying in front of the television and consuming whatever I could. And my family's very active, and so we're more outdoorsy sports people. And
Yeah.
anytime I could find myself in front of a TV was kind of a safe, sweet spot for me. But yeah, I would say it was really only until I got into the business that I started working more in features. So not only kind of started to fall in love with movies again as an adult in the process of working with them, but also kind of had to re-educate myself in watching a lot of films and yeah, it's really I found my dream job in this space, and I'm very happy here. But yeah, from the dawn of time, I was in front of a trying to be in front of a screen.
Do you remember some of those shows and things that captured you early on that you were just so hooked on?
Oh yeah, Alias was a big TV show for
Oh
me
yeah.
growing up. Jennifer Gardner, J.J. Abrams. Without that show, I would not be in this business. I think for me, that was kind of an inflection point of escapism with a great female spy character who was running off on amazing missions, and just having a role model that I really could aspire to be and see myself in Sydney Bristow and Jennifer Gardner. So that show is a big deal for me, and it's probably not a surprise that I love spy movies and spy craft in movies to this day. But then on the film front, The Italian Job with Charlize was a big movie
Oh
for
yeah.
me growing up. Really, really loved that. Probably watched that on repeat. And Charlie's Angels, I would say, with Cameron and Lucy and Drew. That was another female-centric spy movie. Those were probably the 3 core pieces of projects that really got me to where I am today in terms of taste.
Yeah, all exciting, great female characters, spy, espionage, action. It kind of has,
Heists,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Has
heist. Definitely, kind of paints a picture. I know you recently worked on Jackpot, is that right?
Yeah.
And kind of a fun, actiony heist, great female character, funny movie that we saw recently. I want to say it was last year. Yeah, Amazon.
Yes, it came out in August of 2024. That was my first movie that I found the script for, an amazing script by Rob Yescombe that was just biting and original. I always joke with Rob that every kind of like henchman that gets beat up by John Cena even had a kind of a witty character description to them. And it was just a script that I fell in love with. And it did remind me of those great action comedies we had where it was just kind of two people surviving against all odds in a way that was really thrilling and comedic at the same time. And that was probably the movie I wanted to watch growing up. And so it was an honor for that to be one of the first ones I made. So
Yeah, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Greenwich, Connecticut. I grew up
Okay.
in kind of the land of finance
Yeah.
and lawyers, and not a lot of creatives, admittedly. I think I grew up with kind of a perception that art was very much to be appreciated. My mom always says beautifully and broadly educated, and I've
Hmm.
attended many museums and whatnot growing up, but I didn't know a lot of people who pursued the arts or anything creative as a career.
Yeah.
So it definitely felt like a risk coming out to Hollywood and chasing it. And it definitely felt like I had a little bit to prove to
Hmm.
just to show that I could be successful in this as opposed to going about that kind of doctor, lawyer, banker, more traditional expected paths that felt like they had a little bit more of a path, an actual path to follow. But hey, it worked out all right.
I was going to say, yeah, because you went to University of Michigan, right? And you did a screenwriting or a screen arts bachelor's?
Yes, I think they do call it film and TV now. When I
Okay.
went there, they called it the Screen Arts and Cultures degree, but they just wanted to be inclusive of all the screens.
Yeah.
But yeah, I specifically got a screenwriting kind of sub concentration, or you call it a minor, there, which is, I think I was one of 17 kids who got that year.
Well,
So it's a bit more of a curated program path that you have to go to for writing. But yeah, I got to Michigan. I absolutely love that school and I'm really, really grateful for the education I got there. I think we had a really good balance of teachers who were really educating you on the craft from the ground up, but also had a really practical understanding of the business and how to prepare us for that. So I couldn't speak more highly about the program, and have every intention of kind of going back there at some point to be involved. So
that's great.
go
Yeah.
blue all the way.
Go Blue. Well, I was going to say too, I saw on your LinkedIn that you had taken a little gap or during that time went to London with NYU's Tisch School of the Arts there, right? Talk a little
Yeah.
bit about that.
They, Tisch through NYU had an incredible program. I don't believe exists anymore. That was a partnership with the BBC Arts,
Okay.
and the BBC Arts Academy in London is another fantastic program they have out there to train people from the ground up to be a BBC employee, and that kind of in every aspect from technical to creative to executive. And they
Yeah.
had a partnership with NYU to bring over 8 students every semester to go through the academy. And I was taught multicam TV directing from the UK director of The Voice, who
Wow.
just that week he was paid to teach us, and the next week he was probably going to go paid to work on The Voice. That's kind of the difference of how they do the BBC runs, because it is a federally funded program. These employees sometimes that's the job of the week. And
Yeah.
so it was a really incredible education. It was also just an amazing experience, I think, from getting to go to Harry Potter studios to, like I said, that education in of itself. I was taught TV writing. I wrote a pilot while I was there through the BBC. And then every single week we went to a play and got a tour through a museum. And so our just the breadth of arts education was really robust through that. And another amazing experience I'm super grateful to have had.
Yeah, can you talk about one thing from that time there with the BBC that you use every day, every week, every project, and maybe one thing that you've intentionally forgotten, something that is not so useful these days?
The one thing I noticed working at the BBC, because by the time I got there, I think I had gone through 2 years of interning at Good Morning America, actually. And so I
Okay.
had a bit of an understanding of how American broadcast TV worked. And then when I went to the BBC, I was put on a team of like I think three or four of us plus a presenter. We were doing a kind of documentary series on palaces. It was like a guy walking around talking about the beauty and art and history of this palace.
Yeah.
But I remember showing up. It was literally like me, a cameraman, and a producer, and just the multi ability of every single person kind of expected to work on those projects was really astounding. So I think it was learning how to multitask, balancing many tasks at once, also really not being precious about your title and what you had to do, because if you're one of three or four people, you're going to be doing some producer tasks, you're going to be doing some PA tasks.
Yeah.
And so that's something that I think I've taken along as to this day. I try to be a team player and not super precious about my day-to-day tasks. And then one thing I've tried to forget, gosh, I don't know.
Or maybe it's just
Um,
less, yeah, less useful, less applicable in America.
I just that I drank a lot of tea there that I don't here anymore. I think I had more of a caffeine substance abuse problem over there, frankly, than I do here as a non-coffee drinker. So I guess I left that.
Well, I was going to say too, I saw that you had gone back. So that was fall 2013, right?
hmm
And you'd gone back next summer to work on Burnt. Is that right?
Yeah, that was kind of a coincidence that I happened to be doing an internship in London and
Mhm.
then kind of continued on with my education the rest of that year, and then ended up getting an internship working for Stacey Scher as a combination of a PA and a personal assistant and a babysitter to go back out to London. Part of it, I think she was happy to have someone who had just been there and had some, sense of the lay of the land and could safely transport her kids also through the subway system
Yeah.
and whatnot. But yeah, she brought me back and really kind of gave me opportunity to shadow her as a producer on a major motion picture. And again, introduced me to some really incredible people. And I got to just be a fly on the wall from watching Harvey Weinstein fire someone in a restaurant to, watching Bradley Cooper try to slim down coming off of American Sniper. It was just a really, really fun experience. And I was just wide eyed 21-year-old taking it all in.
I mean, yeah, for everyone who hasn't seen this movie, it's pre The Bear, big cooking movie. I mean, $20 million budget or so.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bradley Cooper, a pretty good cast around him, and it's fast paced. It's really intense at times. That's amazing. So yeah, you got to go intern on a $20 million set. That's pretty great.
And we had some of the most incredible chefs as consultants on that movie. I would
Yeah.
like have a casual conversation with Marco Pierre White, who's one of the most accomplished chefs, who is also a really wonderful guy.
Yeah.
And just that those are the kind of experiences that I think you don't expect getting into Hollywood, as the people that you would meet that have nothing to do directly with filmmaking, but that really
Yeah.
enrich the culture of the movie and in the industry. Those little happy accidents and surprises, I think, are really what make it special.
Yeah, I can only imagine, just like you're saying, tangentially meeting all these different people that are not associated with the film, or I guess are associated with the film, not just actors or directors and things like that. So I guess
Yeah.
coming off of that, you went back to school for another year or two. Then did you come out straight to Hollywood?
I was here 8 days after I graduated. Yeah,
Wow.
I was ready to go. I think partially taking that year abroad, my junior year, and then I went back to Michigan for my senior year, which was lovely, but I think I was definitely energized to start working.
Yeah.
And I was out here 8 days after I graduated. I always joke that kind of my way into the industry was through nepotism, through babysitting. So I knew that I could get out to LA and at least get myself through the summer through babysitting jobs. I had a couple of
Mhm.
families out here that I could work for. And very coincidentally and gratefully, they all also ended up being industry people. And I joke that after a couple of months of trusting you with their kids, they'll trust you with their schedule.
Yeah.
And I got a writer's PA gig on Santa Clarita Diet, working that came again through babysitting. Through I would work for Tim Oliphant, and by then I had internship experience and on-set experience through Burnt, and they gave me a chance in the writers' room there. I spent 2 years as a writer's PA on Santa Clarita Diet, a really really fantastic production. Um, and that really got my foot in the door.
And so you work on Santa Clarita Diet, writer's PA, and then I know over the next few years you kind of moved until you got to RK Films, right? So executive and creative assistant to an Oscar-nominated filmmaker for a year plus. How did you land at RK Films and what drew you there as opposed to another studio, working for a producer, or another writer's room, anything else?
Yeah, I'm happy to say I worked for 2 years for David O. Russell, though that
Oh,
was
David O. Russell.
filmmaker. Very educational experience during the development process on Amsterdam.
Uh-huh.
And during that time, I worked closely with some of his producing partners, and I think that was an eye-opening experience of like, this is really where my sweet spot is kind
Gotcha.
of the nexus of creativity and business and getting to have your hands in all sides of filmmaking. And so when I saw the job opening up at RK Films to work for Jeff Kirschenbaum, I jumped at it. Very luckily got that, and I've been there and grown there for the past 5.5 years, and have really, again, really lucky to be there. It's a really productive company. You know, we are called a production companies, but sometimes ones can be more active than others. And so
Yeah.
I'm very grateful to be at one that is very much making movies and plugged into the business. And I always say we have a kind of a quid pro quo style at RK that you go out, you build, you make things of your own, and you go fight for your projects and try to leverage them into being. So as much as there is hierarchy and structure, you can kind of surpass that with going out and finding your own success within the company.
Yeah, well, what advice would you give to someone who maybe knows they like writing or they like producing or like to kind of be in that world, but they're not exactly sure which lane to go on? Is it just go work until you figure it out and like work within a company that works well so you can see every role? Is it going to just networking things? What do you think is a good path for those people looking for those jobs?
I think if you're still in the process of figuring out writing versus producing, getting work experience is going to illuminate that which path is better for you, but also just doing it. If you are someone who genuinely loves writing and you spend time every day writing, then you probably are a writer. There are people who call themselves a writer who frankly don't write. And I was probably a little bit of one of those writers. I could write. I was a good writer. I could sit down and get myself to complete an assignment by a date, but I didn't have that kind of burning, I won't be able to sleep tonight desire to write every day, which I do
Gotcha.
think is part of the ingredient to having that profession. I'm someone who is extremely energized by jumping in to the trenches with writers, working on multiple projects, and then going into a casting meeting, going into a marketing meeting, and looking at things from all different sides. That's what I've really fallen in love with the business. And I think you do have to, if you're going to be a producer, you also have to be willing to, yeah, you're going to screenings. You have to, being social is very much a part of the job, and putting yourself out there and networking, and meeting people all the time, and taking in new movies all the time, and then catching up on the old movies that you haven't seen that got referenced in movies that you nod your head and pretend that you've seen. So I think I only figured that out with experience, myself, but there's also a couple of, I think, some honest conversations that need to be had also as you figure out or you get that experience.
Yeah, you're right. Being old enough slash experienced and wise enough to know yourself, to know where you actually would fit in. I
Yeah.
mean, at least for you, you started as an executive assistant at RK Films, and now you're a creative executive.
Mm.
What was that like, and how did that process go from being an executive assistant for 2 years to now moving into this role? Almost 3 years ago. Was it difficult? Was it hard for them to see you move within the company, or was it kind of a more natural thing as you put in good work?
It was a very natural thing. It's kind of a funny story. I had started off as Kirsch's assistant, but having worked for David, having worked for Stacey Sher before, was pretty experienced on the desk,
Yeah.
and very quickly started taking on some more creative tasks. I'm definitely have probably a more writer oriented brain as a producer. I want to jump in there with notes, documents, and really get in on the creative and the psychology of characters. And that's where my kind of strengths have really supported me at the company specifically, in that I do a lot of the notes and a lot of the reading. And that started kind of naturally turning into me running creative point on certain projects and having to be the person to deliver the notes to writers when you're the one
Yeah.
kind of putting them together. So I started to have a kind of a mini slate as an assistant of projects that I was working on, and it came to a point where I may have been not as 100% killing it as an assistant because I had a lot going on, and
Hmm.
went to my boss and said, I think I'm spread a little thin. I think I'm already doing kind of the executive job. And unbeknownst to me, he had already hired my replacement. So he was waiting
Oh,
for me to go in there and ask for my promotion,
yeah.
and advocate for myself because I had already earned the job. I just needed to go ask for it. So that was kind of a fun, eye-opening, I think, learning experience also is you can go and do the job, but sometimes you also have to go ask for it. So
Yeah. I guess in that transformation from assistant to creative exec, from your time taking screenwriting classes at Michigan all the way through all of your work before David O. Russell and all these different movies, what did you learn over time, and I guess what stuck out as what you were really good at when it came to scripts and breaking stories, or was it just giving a note or tweaking an idea? Was it finding the right writers? What did you feel like you really excelled at?
I think I have a unique ability to see what the problem is with a script and then communicate it effectively to a writer so they can then take that note and apply it in their own way, in a way that's going to enhance the script and kind of hopefully address the note that I'm giving, but doesn't take away from their instinct and their own artistic ability to find their way through it. I really do love people and human psychology, and I think that when you're getting to the basis of movies, it kind of comes down to scenes. Scenes come down to obstacles and tension, and it comes down to what do people want? What does a character want in that circumstance? And
Yeah.
if you really drill that down to the purest form of what's going on in the scene, it all comes down to having a conversation with the writer of what would you do? What would he do? What would she do? And what experiences have informed their ability to make that decision? And and that's kind of the basis, I think, of storytelling a lot of the time. And so I think I can cut through and have those conversations with writers and then help them figure their way through obstacles that way.
Yeah, it sounds like a well-tuned ability to be able to give a note and let them fix it in their voice and what they know about the characters versus you sitting down and writing it yourself and saying, "Here, put it in there."
Sometimes that happens because being prescriptive can be the way of giving the note so the
Hmm.
writer can translate it for themselves. But I definitely consider my job as a writer to be not only seeing the best potential of a script, but not dictating process, but getting the best out of how a writer wants to work. I have some writers who we have a conversation and they go off for months and they come back with a script. And then I have other writers who every 2 weeks they want to check in. I have
Wow.
other writers who are sending me screenshots of dialogue as they're writing and saying, does this sound right? Does that look right? And I'm here to support those different processes, not to tell them how to write or how to be creative. So that requires me to be adaptable to the
Yeah.
writer, and not the other way around. And I do believe that's how we get the best out of the scripts.
Yeah, and that sounds like it. I mean, can you take us through the process? Maybe I know we just talked about Jackpot, that you find a script or a screenwriter and take it all the way through production. Do you start with meeting with agents and managers? Are you guys doing a cattle call? Are you accepting submissions and you're taking scripts from assistants and then you're reading them and picking from a lot, or how does that work?
Yes to everything you said. I have agents and managers calling me with everything from pitches to articles to fully baked scripts to semi-baked scripts to everything in
Yeah.
between. As a way of coming through, I have writers who come in and just pitch me ideas of things that are floating around in their minds, or they met some person with an amazing life story that they have now the rights to, and they want to partner up to write it. So a movie, the genesis of the ideas really come from anywhere and everywhere. And then depending on where they come from, the process can be really similar or different. I mean, it's always about for me, getting a spec script is always the goal.
Yeah.
Sometimes I don't beat around the bush. Getting a spec script from a writer means them writing for free sometimes
Mhm.
to get there. Sometimes I get a script from a writer that they've already put 9 months into their own spec script, and I get it, and I'm like, this is great, but can we do it this way? And that means more work that they have to do for free. But again, I only do it if it does kind of check certain boxes of projects I'm looking for. And I truly believe that it's a movie that I can champion within the company. I
Yeah.
think when you're a young executive, you get really excited to build and everything has potential and you want to pour your passion into it. And then as time goes on, you learn to be a little more strategic, understand more what the mandates are, not only of your company, but what the studios are looking for. Because everyone is looking for are looking for projects that they can win with, that they can champion to their bosses, that they can get greenlit and get made. And so there's finding that sweet spot of playing the game in that way,
Mhm.
and then really being passionate about the creative and the stories that you're telling, and trying to kind of match up those two sides.
Yeah, I don't know if you started watching The Studio. It's on Apple TV Plus, Seth Rogen's show.
I have been hearing everything about it. I am late to the game.
Well, I hope you do give it a watch. But Chase Sui Wonders plays a young executive who gets promoted on one of the earlier episodes, and they have one episode that just shows a little more of her internal struggle of trying to have a prestige, director, someone avant-garde, A24, come over and make a movie for the studio that's trying to make more commercial stuff. For
Mhm.
yourself, how have you seen over time? Have your taste changed what you're looking for? Where maybe you wanted more prestige to something more commercial or a mix in between, or yeah, drama versus comedy. How has that changed for you in the last few years?
I think the one kind of buzz term we are always going after right now is the eventized movie. These are the
Yeah.
movies that if you're a very casual moviegoer, maybe you go once or twice a year, that is the movie that gets you there. I would say in recent years it's been Barbie, it's been Top Gun, maybe
Mhm.
last year it was Wicked. I think coming up this year it could be the F1 movie, for example. But these are the
Mhm.
movies that really kind of bring a lot of different audiences together. That's always something we're going to be on the lookout for, but those are also few and far between. Those are
Yeah.
big packages that only a few a few people can really put together. But in terms of what you're asking of prestige and commercial, I like to believe they can be one and the same.
Yeah.
That is something that I try to go after. Like I said, of some of those movies, The Italian Job, even like Good Will Hunting was one of my favorite movies growing up. Those are prestige movies, but those are commercial movies. And
Yeah.
so I think it's difficult to find something that's both high concept and feels really kind of like grounded in human motion and can pull through all quadrants, but that's a challenge.
Yeah.
I think I heard Lord do an interview one time, and she talked about pop music and how people look down on pop music and popular culture movies sometimes because it's what everyone likes. But don't you think it's harder to create something that everyone likes, or
Yeah.
that everyone kind of wants to go see? And I happen to work at a production company that is a lot of our goal is to find movies that are kind of popcorn movies, audience movies that are going to get people excited to go to the theaters and grab their friends or their family and go and escape for a little bit. And I think that's a gift to have that as a job to be able to do and to give to people. And it's also a big challenge. So I'm always going to go after those kind of movies. I also personally, I love a heist movie. I love a spy movie. I love these fun blockbuster movies. So I'm always going to go
Yeah.
after those. But then I do want to give. There are plenty of filmmakers out there. I would say like Caroline Lindy, who just did Your Monster, or Josh Margolin, who did Thelma, who I want them to do these type of movies. So,
Mhm.
and I will say we're sending them the scripts and giving them those opportunities. And so, it's a matter of finding the right ones for those right pieces of talent.
Yeah, it really feels like a combination of having the knack and knowledge and wisdom and also timing, and there's so many different elements here. I guess a question I have is what's one creative decision you're really proud of? And what's one maybe you're like, I could have done that differently, or if circumstances were different, it would have been a better decision, but it wasn't at that time.
Gosh, it's a good question. I think just recently a creative decision I'm proud of. I just took on a script recently that for all intents and purposes, is not a movie that my company would make in terms of it doesn't have the big budget flashy things, but
Yeah.
it's really a kind of like an incredible script. And then when I sent it to my boss, he was like, "Yeah, this cuts through. This really it has
Wow.
great characters and great story, and let's go for it." And again, that's the beauty of working at a company is that like RK is that great scripts do rise to the top. So I'm proud of myself for sticking to my gut on some of these scripts. I would say a decision that I made that I regret or would take back. I think it's not a kind of a theme of something is again is when you have a creative opinion is making it known. I mean, a lot of
Yeah.
the time it's difficult to get a seat at the table. And my boss is always saying, okay, we're going to give you a seat at the table. Now have an opinion and share it. And sometimes when you're coming up, it can be scary to do so. But I think there are times, especially with and like specifically in the development of Jackpot, that there were really fancy, powerful people who were working on that and they were making decisions. And I deferred to their expertise as maybe over maybe deferring to my gut
Yeah.
and not saying something. And I wouldn't say there was anything specific that would have been totally different had I spoken up, but it's more just kind of learning to trust your opinion and make them known, and people will respect you for them as long as you put care and thought, I think, into
Yeah.
them.
Well placed. Well
Yeah.
placed. I saw you had volunteered with a film festival in the past. If you had an
Yeah.
award in your name at a film festival, what would it be for?
Oh my gosh. Any award I could get that would be a real honor to me would be in my support of writers. So
Okay.
I don't know how you would name that award, but I really do this job so I can call a writer and tell them that I've sold their script
Mm.
or that some big actor has attached their script or a director is coming on to it. Like that is the goal for me a lot of the times is to read a story that a writer has come up with and be the one to help champion it to the big screen.
Yeah.
So any award that is the best producer of the year for supporting writers to achieve their dreams, that would be the award I would love to win.
Well, we hope to see it someday. That's what I'll say. We hope to see it someday. I guess last question for everyone who's listening. I know we don't have a video element to the podcast out yet. You've got a poster of Silver Linings Playbook up. I love that movie. Can you talk
I sure
about
do.
some of the movies in the past 5, 10 years, or I guess just any favorite movies that are still on your mind that you're like, oh, this is just either changed how I thought about movies, or it's just always the front of my mind. I want to make something like this. Just any favorite movies that you want to talk about.
Sure. I would say the movies that really kind of blew my mind and made me take a step back as of recently, Poor Things, Yorgos
Oh yeah,
Lanthimos, Emma Stone. That movie really entertained me, I think, on all levels, and was a reminder to me professionally that you can have an auteur filmmaker take a huge creative swing and have it be funny and commercial at the same time. I really can't fault that movie in any way. I thought it was really beautifully done. On a similar but completely different note, Mad Max Fury Road. I remember seeing that movie like by myself at the Grove, which is a big theater here in LA, and was so viscerally energized by that movie. Like I had to walk around before I got in the car because I knew like I would definitely get in an accident if I drove after that, and was just so incredibly inspired by the pacing and the tone and the cinematic vision of that film.
yeah.
So those are two recently. I would say on a big scale. On a smaller scale, I just got back by South by Southwest. I saw The Baltimoreans, which is a new J. Duplass movie with a star Michael Strassner, who also co-wrote it. And that was a movie that just thought was so charming. I'm a big fan of the Linklater trilogy, Before Sunset, Before Sunrise, Before Midnight, and that The Baltimoreans had a lot of that in it. And again, those are the movies that kind of remind me of just the basis of storytelling is great chemistry and a great script between characters. So those are kind of recent movies. I would say American Fiction when that came out last
Oh
year
yeah.
also kind of blew my mind in a way of using a really clever device in bringing the kind of storytelling to life as the writer was writing his book to kind of reflect how he was picturing scenes and projecting conversations. So those have all been really inspiring to me in the past couple of years, I would say.
Yeah, American Fiction was a funny one. I don't think I loved it right after I walked to the theater. I had like issues or it's just something in my head wasn't clicking. But it's one of those movies that
Mhm.
you just can't stop thinking about it. So you're like, I guess it is that great. If I just can't stop thinking
It's
about it.
definitely if it's a conversation starter, I think you know that you've hit on something.
Yeah.
I love movies that cause you to have those conversations. I recently, Cat Person, I think came out at Sundance a couple years ago, and I saw it with a friend, and we came back as we were walking back from the theater. We realized we had completely different perspectives on kind of like if the main character was kind of sketchy bad dude or kind of
Hmm.
an okay good dude. And I realized it was kind of all informed by our own personal dating histories. So
Wow.
movies can do that too. They can really just be a mirror and reflect your own experiences. And yeah, I think that's one of the sides of this art that makes it really powerful.
Yeah, without sounding too cliche, it is kind of the magic of movies that it lets you transport yourself and also learn more about yourself the more you watch.
Yeah, it takes you away and it brings you back,
Yeah.
as beautiful and painful as it might be.
Well, I'm glad it's taken you here to LA from Connecticut and Michigan, and that you're continuing to do good work. I hope to catch up with you again in the future as more comes out. And if anyone wants to get a hold of you, or maybe ask questions, or learn more about your path, what's the best way for someone to reach out to you?
Gosh, I'm not super social media focused, but I would say I'm public on Instagram, so you can hit me up that way.
There you go.
And it's at Seldy Gray on Instagram.
We'll make sure to have that
You
link
can
in the
find me
show
there.
notes. Yeah, yeah, as well as your IMDb, RK Films, and thank you again for coming on today.
Thank you, Tristan. Appreciate it.